June 23, 1944. Mid-Atlantic Ocean, 850 miles west of Cape Verde Islands, 2340 hours. Lieutenant Commander Jesse Taylor, 32, Squadron Commander of VC-69 aboard USS Bogue, stared at a radar contact 15 miles ahead. His Grumman TBF Avenger had been searching for 8 hours. Japanese submarine I-52 was somewhere below, carrying 2 tons of gold to Nazi Germany. The Japanese captain believed darkness and the open ocean made him invisible. But what the submarine crew didn't know, Taylor carried 5 small cylinders in his bomb bay. Radio sonobuoys, technology so new, most submariners had never heard of it. What happened in the next 45 minutes would prove the ocean was no longer a hiding place. By mid-1944, Allied convoys had broken the German U-boat threat in the Atlantic. Escort carriers, radar, and depth charges had turned the tide. But the Pacific remained different. Japanese submarines operated differently than German boats. They ran deeper, stayed submerged longer, and used the vast ocean distances as protection. American doctrine said, "Find them on the surface with radar, attack before they dive." Once submerged, submarines vanished. Sonar from ships had limited range. Aircraft had eyes but no underwater ears. Except now, they did. The expendable radio Sonobuoy had been invented at Columbia University's Underwater Sound Lab in 1942. A simple concept: drop a waterproof cylinder containing a hydrophone and radio transmitter. The hydrophone listens underwater. The transmitter sends what it hears to the aircraft above. Cost $12. Weight 13 pounds. Battery life 4 hours. By 1944, RCA had produced 150,000 units. They were color-coded by frequency: purple, orange, blue, red, yellow, green. An aircrew could drop a pattern, then listen to each buoy by tuning the receiver to match the color. The technology worked in theory, but I-52 would be the first test against a Japanese submarine in open ocean, at night, after it had already submerged. Taylor had launched from Bogue at 1830 hours. Intelligence intercepts, decoded through the Ultra program, had pinpointed I-52's rendezvous with German U-boat U-530. The German boat was transferring radar detection equipment and 2 technicians to help I-52 reach occupied France. By 2340, the rendezvous had just finished. U-530 had departed. I-52 was alone, running on the surface to recharge batteries. Taylor's radar operator Ed Whitlock picked up the contact. Taylor pushed the Avenger to 300 feet and approached the target area. At 23:48, he dropped a flare. The I-52 lit up like noon. 356 feet long, surfaced, making 14 knots. Taylor released 2 Mark 54 depth bombs from 250 feet. The submarine crash-dived. Within 60 seconds, it had disappeared beneath the Atlantic. Traditional doctrine said, "Mark the spot. Call in destroyers. Wait hours for them to arrive." By then, submarine could be 10 miles away in any direction. Taylor did something different. He dropped a purple-coated Sonobuoy at the dive point. The cylinder hit the water. Its parachute collapsed around it. The 24-inch antenna extended. Battery activated. At 24 feet depth, the hydrophone began listening. Taylor climbed to 1,500 feet and tuned his receiver to purple frequency. For 10 seconds, nothing. Then, through his headset, rhythmic thumping. Propeller cavitation. The I-52 was running deep, but not silent. Taylor's wingman, Lieutenant Junior Grade William Gordon, arrived in a second Avenger. Taylor gave him the purple buoy's location as reference. Working together, they dropped 4 more buoys in a cloverleaf pattern. Orange 2 miles north, blue 2 miles east, red 2 miles south, yellow 2 miles west. Each color told them something. By comparing sound intensity across all 5 buoys, they could triangulate the submarine's position and direction. Purple, loud. Orange, faint. Blue, moderate. Red, loud. Yellow, faint. Submarine was moving south-southwest. Taylor calculated intercept point, At 01:05 hours, June 24th, he dropped the weapon that would change submarine warfare forever. The Mark 24 mine. That's what it was called publicly. Its real name was Fido, an acoustic homing torpedo. Fido had its own hydrophone. Once in the water, it listened for propeller noise. When it detected a submarine, it steered toward the sound. Fire and forget. The first true smart weapon. The torpedo splashed into the Atlantic 400 yards ahead of I-52's projected course. Gordon, circling overhead, heard through his Sonobuoy receiver propeller sounds, growing louder as the submarine approached. Then a different noise, higher pitch, faster. The Fido's propeller accelerating toward its target. At 01:10 hours, a sound like thunder through the Sonobuoy system. Then silence. No propeller cavitation. No machinery noise, nothing. Taylor and Gordon dropped additional buoys. Complete quiet. They circled until 0300 hours, monitoring. At first light, destroyer escorts USS Janssen and USS Haverfield arrived at the coordinates. On the surface, rubber rafts, silk, raw materials, human remains, oil slick spreading for half a mile. I-52 had carried 109 crew, 2 tons of gold, 228 tons of tin, tungsten, opium, and quinine, bound for Germany as part of the Axis Technology Exchange Program. All lost. But the technology demonstrated that night proved more valuable than the gold. This was the first confirmed submarine kill using the combination of sonobuoys and acoustic torpedo. The technique proved several things at once. Aircraft could track submerged submarines in open ocean without ship support. They could maintain contact even in darkness. They could deliver precision weapons to moving targets underwater. The U.S. Navy immediately expanded Sonobuoy production. By war's end, they had manufactured 150,000 units and 7,500 receivers. Every anti-submarine aircraft carried them. Every patrol squadron trained on them. Statistics proved their value. From 1939 to 1942, Allied forces destroyed 150 enemy submarines. From 1943 to 1945, using hunter-killer groups with Sonobuoy-equipped aircraft, they destroyed nearly 600. Aircraft alone, or aircraft working with ships, accounted for 40% of all submarine kills. The Japanese Navy analyzed the I-52 loss through survivor reports from other actions. By late 1944, Japanese submarine doctrine had changed. Boats were ordered to remain submerged longer. Surface transits reduced to absolute minimum. Snorkel breathing apparatus installed on newer boats. When Japanese submarine crews were briefed on the new American capability, the reaction was immediate. One submarine commander, Commander Takahashi Atsushi of I-36, survived depth charge attack by Sonobuoy-equipped aircraft in September 1944. Years later, he recalled, "We knew American radar could find us on surface. We did not know their aircraft could track us underwater. When we learned this, we understood. The ocean was no longer our hiding place." German U-boat command received reports of the technology through their own experiences. Admiral Karl Dönitz noted in August 1944 War Diary, "Allied aircraft now maintain contact after diving. Previous advantage of submerging to escape has been eliminated. All boats must avoid surface operation within range of enemy carriers." The psychological impact was as important as the tactical one. Submariners had always relied on one certainty. Once you dive, you disappear. Aircraft can't follow. Ships lose contact. You control when to surface, when to attack, when to run. Sonobuoys eliminated that certainty. Now diving meant only that you couldn't see your hunter. But your hunter could still hear you. The technology continued evolving. By 1950, Sonobuoys had directional capability. By 1960, they could operate at 300-foot depths. By the Cold War, they became sophisticated enough to identify specific submarine classes by acoustic signature alone. The modern descendant, the ANSSQ-53 DFAR Sonobuoy, can operate at depths to 1,000 feet and detect submarines at ranges measured in miles. P-8 Poseidon aircraft carry 129 sonobuoys each. Global production since 1942 exceeds 50 million units. Today's Sonobuoy weighs 39 pounds, costs $1,400, and contains processing power that would have filled a warehouse in 1944. But the core concept remains identical. Drop it from aircraft, listen underwater, transmit to receiver. But it started with 13 pounds of electronics, a hydrophone at 24 feet, and a commander willing to try something new at midnight over the Atlantic. Jesse Taylor continued flying anti-submarine missions until war's end. VC-69 participated in 8 hunter-killer operations. Taylor received the Navy Cross for the I-52 action. The citation noted, "Initiative in employing new technology under combat conditions resulted in destruction of enemy submarine and demonstrated capabilities that reshaped naval warfare doctrine." He left the Navy in 1946, returned to Iowa, worked in aviation insurance, rarely spoke about the war. When asked about the I-52, he gave standard answer: "Did my job, used the tools they gave us. It worked out." In 1995, an expedition led by Paul Tidwell located I-52's wreck at 17,000 feet depth, 1,200 miles west of Cape Verde. The submarine sits upright, hull intact except for catastrophic damage amidships where Fido struck. The gold remains aboard. Salvage has proven impossible at that depth. Taylor didn't live to see the discovery. He passed away in 1969, age 57. Obituary mentioned Navy service. Did not detail the I-52 action. Family remembers him as quiet man who kept his medals in a drawer, rarely displayed them. William Gordon, the second Avenger pilot that night, flew for Pan American Airways after the war. In 1994 interview, age 73, he recalled the mission. "We could hear everything through those sonobuoys. The submarine, our torpedo, the explosion. It was like having ears into the ocean." After that night, I knew submarines had lost their biggest advantage. Invisibility. Robert White, RCA engineer on the original Sonobuoy development team, continued working on underwater acoustics until retirement in 1975. In 1988 speech at Columbia University, he reflected on the project. "We were trying to solve a simple problem. How do you give an airplane underwater hearing? The answer was obvious once we thought about it. A floating radio transmitter connected to a hydrophone. What surprised us was how well it worked in combat." Jesse Taylor proved it wasn't just theory. Today, every navy in the world uses sonobuoys. China produces their own versions. Russia developed directional variants. The basic concept hasn't changed in 80 years. Drop it from aircraft. Listen underwater. Transmit what you hear. The principle behind it reflects something larger about technological warfare. Submarines relied on invisibility. Darkness, depth, distance. As long as they stayed hidden, they controlled the battle space. One simple device eliminated that advantage. Not through brute force, through information. Knowing where the submarine was proved more powerful than any weapon. I-52 carried technology to Germany that would have helped Axis submarines detect Allied radar. If successful, it might have extended the U-boat campaign months longer. Instead, it became a demonstration that the ocean's invisibility had ended. At the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, there's a display case with an AN/CRT-1 Sonobuoy, the 1944 model. Faded orange cylinder, 36 inches long, paper tube coated with resin. Looks simple, crude even. Visitors ask, "This little thing changed submarine warfare?" Museum guides explain, "Submarines owned the ocean because aircraft couldn't hear underwater. This let aircraft hear. Once that happened, submarines lost their sanctuary." There's a guest book at the display. Entries from former submariners. One from 1998 stands out. From a retired Japanese submarine officer, "My father served on I-36. He survived the war. He told me about the day they learned American planes could track them underwater. He said it felt like fighting with the lights turned on. You could no longer hide. You could only hope you were faster." Another entry from a U.S. Navy Sonobuoy technician, 2003. "I maintain the systems on P-8s. Every time I load sonobuoys, I think about the guys who used these in 1944. We have computers now, satellites, advanced processing. But the idea is still the same. Drop it, listen, find them. Thank you to the pioneers who proved it works. The lesson extends beyond naval warfare. In any contest, the side that sees clearly wins. Doesn't matter if you're outgunned, if you can see and your opponent can't. Information dominance beats firepower. Dominance, military superiority isn't always about bigger weapons. Sometimes it's about better information. Submarines couldn't hide if someone was listening. Jesse Taylor didn't invent sonobuoys, didn't design them, didn't manufacture them. He proved they worked when it mattered, and that's often more important than invention itself. Ideas need someone willing to use them under pressure. June 23, 1944. A commander dropped 5 cylinders into the Atlantic. Listened. Calculated. Fired and turned the ocean transparent. The world's submarines have been fighting uphill ever since.